Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Redditors, tell me the story of why you abruptly left your job, part 4. I worked at a fast food chain. It wasn't very big and was mostly quiet. I worked every night from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. 6 days a week. Even though it was supposed to, I always finished late because I had too much to do when I worked alone. It was always my boss's fault that something wasn't cleaned right or wasn't in the right place. Though it does happen sometimes, I knew she was lying when she said something like that every shift. I got sick of being lied to every night for about 6 months and I quit working. I asked for an extra night off so I could hang out with that new girl I met. What's the answer? From 30 to 35 hours a week, it dropped to 20, then 15, then finally 10 hours a week. When I asked my boss why she was cutting my hours by so much, she went crazy and said I was too picky about my schedules and that I always changed my mind. No more than 2 nights off, please. After that, she gave me back the 30 to 35 hours. The other week, I asked her, why are you giving me that many hours? I just asked for 2 nights off every week. What did she say? 5 hours every week. When I saw that schedule, I just went to her office with my clothes and just threw it at her face and told her I quit and to deal with the empty shifts. I'm leaving. She declared bankruptcy about 2 months later. I began working at this nice restaurant when I was 21 years old. The first few days went well, but I had to work alone in a small kitchen for 12 to 14 hours a day with no breaks. I would have to clear the table, polish the wine glasses, and cook most of the meals by myself. I only had 1 day of training, and it wasn't enough. As I worked hard in the kitchen doing everything, I saw that things were only going to get worse because my boss was drinking all day at the bar. It was also common for the other men who worked there to make comments about my body. The last straw was when my boss made me work until late at night. I had been there all day without any breaks, food, or anything else. He came into the kitchen to check on me while he was drunk. I asked him if there was any way I could get home soon since I had been there all day and it was past my meeting time. Following this, my boss tells me I can leave whenever he wants. Here's the thing. I'm a huge introvert and I hate conflict, but if someone is being a jerk to me, I'm gonna fight back. I looked him straight in the eyes and told him I'm leaving at 10. He yelled at me, "You effing leave when I say you can leave and stop being a little bee." I took off my S and walked right out of there. He texted me that night while he was drunk and asked me to come in the next morning. I said no thanks. He lost the restaurant and went bankrupt in the end. I also learned that I was the 9th trainee they had had in the year they had been open. I used to work for a software company. New customers could quickly make an app for their business with our own product, which we made. But in order to go global, we needed to get some important people to back some big changes. I got in touch with a business that helps connect businesses with investors. When someone talks about drip funding, they really mean choking your company until it's broke and can't stop you from buying the whole thing when you have to file for bankruptcy. You see, the business did find a financer to put us in touch with, but what we didn't know is that this investor promised us a nice reward if they could trick us into investing in a drip campaign while they looked for more investors. We finally got it and began looking for our own investor. We discovered one. In the end, we had to file for bankruptcy. They weren't happy that we were able to match their bid. Even though the crooked investor's bid wasn't the highest, the person in charge of the bankruptcy somehow decided that it was the best. We all quit right away because we knew what had happened. He bought an empty business that already had a product that was selling and a lot of work that was mostly done automatically. There are a number of well-known reasons why it would run for a while and then freeze up, but no one was left to give an explanation, just a huge amount of paperwork. In the end, we learned that someone had told him not to try to steal the company. The investment firm, the manager, and even the investor's brother all told him not to do it. There was no one left to buy from the company. We began from scratch and made a new, better product that didn't have any of the major problems with the old one. I grew to dislike investors. I begin my job search when I hear the word investor. In just 48 hours, 86 workers quit and left 13 stores. 2009, video store Blockbuster. I had worked for them for 10 years at this point, and the store managers and I all knew the business was in bad shape. The 2008 market crash, which included Lehman Brothers, messed up Blockbuster, and then Netflix and Redbox put the nail in the coffin. They had just closed their international stores, so we were all afraid that our stores would close too. But regional directors and CEO Jim Keyes reassured us that everything would be okay, that we would be the first to know if any stores were going to close and how they would affect us as individuals and as a team. It was on the front page of Yahoo Finance in October 2009. Blockbuster bankruptcy. 714 stores across the country will close. No effing way. I was very angry. Being a manager, I was in charge of a district. I called all of my store managers and told them I had just learned about it and would be looking into it right away. When I finally called my boss, the regional director, he looked at me and said, "We had a good run." This made me feel angry, worried, and betrayed. "You'll at least get paid off." After telling me which stores in our area were closing first, he told me to keep the herd calm. We don't need a mass walkout. He then told me I would be part of the crew that shut down all the stores one by one and that I would get a big reward if I stayed until the end. Because I didn't trust this guy at all, I told all of my managers about it and told them if you stay, but I don't promise that they will honor the bonus for doing so. If you decide to quit, I don't blame you, but I can't promise you severance, unemployment, or anything else because you've already quit. I chose to stay because I couldn't stand the thought of someone else ripping apart my stores without any feelings. Because I cared about my customers and teams, I didn't want anyone else to tell them the bad news. I loved my job. I loved working at Blockbuster and really thought I'd retire there one day. But I didn't. I stayed until 2011, going from state to state, closing down stores until there were none left. There you go. Which tale about insane homeowners associations do you have? Part 4. At my old house, there was an HOA with a management company. However, the board members were still busy with Karens. One was an old woman who walked around the neighborhood early in the morning with a wooden ruler to check if people had enough grass or weeds. I got in trouble with her more than once for a single weed that would grow taller than the grass very quickly, even though the lawn was mowed once a week. I'm not exaggerating. The weed would be in the corner of a mowed lawn. I got really sick with labyrinthitis another time, which basically meant I was very dizzy and couldn't do anything. I had to drink Ensers on my couch every day for 3 months because I couldn't walk without falling over, read, or look at a screen without throwing up, and I couldn't keep any food down. I gave up my job and had to take a break from college. The old woman found out from a neighbor and began writing me tickets. Someone told me that my lawn was too overgrown more than once, even though some friends were mowing it for free every 2 weeks. I got a ticket for leaving the trash cans out too long because I had to get down on my hands and knees to move them, and I didn't want to do that in the middle of the day in Florida. The HOA rule was to move them back by noon because the garbage guys came early in the morning. My car license tag had expired, so she called city code enforcement and had the HOA give me a ticket for leaving my car unattended for too long. Again, I clearly couldn't drive, and she knew I was sick. She told a neighbor who helped her that it was all her fault, so I knew it was. When I finally got better and learned how to read, I read all of the HOA rules and information. I then followed them exactly and used their laws against them whenever I could. One of the rules about the trash cans was that they had to be pushed out of the way of traffic, but all the houses were on a steep hill and were flooded, so it wasn't practical to drag them all the way to the backyard. You could build a small structure to hide the can from people driving by, according to the law. You didn't need to get permission first. My dad helped me make a silly little 3-sided cubbyhole for the trash can right next to the road. I painted it garbage can green. Of course, the HOA didn't agree until I showed them their own rule. I meant to poke them in the eye and maybe get them to change that rule. It became a thing when several neighbors put up cubbyholes for their trash, again because dragging cans all the way to the backyard was annoying and hard. The last time I was in town, I drove through the old neighborhood. Almost every house had an ugly trash can cubbyhole in front of it. Now it looks so much worse than if the HOA had just let people move the trash cans to the side of the house. I'm done with HOAs. My neighbor across the street does work on cars for a living in a big metal shed where they weld and bang around loudly until 10 or 11 p.m. most nights. A race car has been set up on blocks in the front yard for a while they work on it. Another neighbor often has 4 or 5 RVs stay on his land, and during the week, they have loud dance parties. I don't care, they own the thing. There are pigs, goats, sheep, chicken, ducks, and a couple of mini dairy cows in my yard. Freedom is 1,000 times better than everyone else in the neighborhood having picture-perfect St. Augustine lawns and shutters that match. I chose not to live in a community with an HOA when I was a teenager. I clearly remember that Ace Recovery Miami towed our cars and the cars of our guests if any parts of the tires touched grass or the street. People stopped coming over, and my mom was running a church prayer group that had to move because our cars kept getting towed, $200 every time. We weren't sure if they were allowed to roam tow, or more likely, Karen was driving around calling. When he finally left that area, I heard a truck had gone in, picked up a car, and was immediately surrounded by residents who told the driver to lower the car. Seems that threats of towing are still being made in many communities in South Florida. It's been about 15 years. I have a friend who has a 1-ton pickup truck these days, the Ford F-350. It's a little rough around the edges, but he moved into the neighborhood before it was built, and the truck has never been a problem until now. The hitch is only an inch from his garage door, so it sticks out 2 feet over the sidewalk. This wasn't a problem while the community filled up and was finished, but then he started getting notices, and the third one would come with a $1,000 fine. And the group wanted to change the rules so that only 3/4 ton or smaller pickups were allowed. He had to go to a few meetings. He went to more meetings and fought his case again, this time by threatening to hire a lawyer. He said that when he felt like he was the only person in the community with a 1-ton, everyone stopped talking to him and being rude. He said it was very quiet in the room. His problem right now is that he has 3 cars, but the association only allows 2. He needs to sell one of his cars to avoid more trouble with them. I have one more friend. I could write a whole book about this. To make a long story short, I told my realtor that he was wasting his time if he showed me anything with an association when I bought my first house and my current house. It wasn't even going to be fun to look at it. From what I can tell too, the homes in Miami that aren't part of an association cost more at first than the homes that are. In a typical community, HOA dues range from $300 to $500 a month. Sometimes structural insurance is included. One of my friends lives on the oceanfront and pays $800 a month in dues. Some of these high-rises cost $1,000 to $1,500. Not interested. I will never live in one of those neighborhoods, even if the deal's really good. Maybe people move there because they have no other choice, or because they don't know what to expect. This is not my story, but it is a good one. My friend used to work for a privately owned HVAC supply company. Let's call the owner Mr. J. He built the business himself and is known for being very thrifty and sensible. In the back of one of their stores, you can find his first car, which is something from the 1960s. He still drives it. Anyway, Mrs. J wanted to live in a house that showed how successful they were, but Mr. J didn't really care. Because his wife had supported him throughout his career, he bought her a house in an upper-middle-class McMansion subdivision. Since all the homes are new, the trees are all small. He digs up a tree in the front yard that doesn't make it through the winter and fills the hole. After a while, he gets a letter from the HOA telling him he needs to get rid of the tree because it's against the rules. He tells them to F off, and they do. One day, he comes home to find a new tree in the front yard and a bill in his mailbox. They fight some more, and he ends up pulling all the trees on his property out of the ground and throwing them in the street. Goes to court, and Mr. J tells his lawyer to keep dragging it out until the HOA runs out of money. The lawyer does so, the HOA is so broke it can't even afford to send out their newsletter, and Mr. J replaces all the trees on his property, including the first one that started it. If you want to watch the part 3, click the link here. We're very, very glad to see you all in the comments again. Many, many thanks for your support.